In my opinion, a cardinal sin is going out to RFP with no intention of closing the deal. Things happen, we all know that. But you issue an RFP, you go to market, you get your third parties to invest time and effort while you either have a solution or don't have a authorization to go and do the RFP or go to contract. You know who you want, but you're following policy. Write an exception to the policy, be honest, be fair, don't waste third parties' time, because ultimately it could turn out you'll have no third parties worth playing with.
Thanks so much for joining. Today, we have a special guest. We have Colleen Mahoney, and she brings some really, really remarkable things that I know are going to help a lot of people here, not least of which is her tremendous sense of gratitude and passion and finding the joy in what you're doing, but also deep experience in contract risk management for IT procurement. And she has helped save companies that she's worked for tens of millions of dollars by avoiding things that would have gone sideways. So, Colleen, thank you so much for joining today.
Thank you for having me.
So, Colleen, as we were talking to get ready for this interview, there's this idea of a powerful, powerful question to help get to the crux of what somebody's really buying, what are they going to get out of it, and that accountability. And it's, are you ready to move forward with something? Can you share this powerful question?
Sure, it's an easy question, sometimes hard to answer. Who's going to sign the contract? Who's authorized? And you can ask it internally and externally. You should know both sides. Who's going to sign? And with that, you'll understand the implications to timing, who's got to have buy-in, who's got to understand what you're doing, who's got to be involved, making sure you're doing it right. Oftentimes, and unfortunately, more times than I want to count, people can't answer that question. They're ready to go, but they don't know who's going to sign. And if you don't know that, you're absolutely not ready to go beyond that. Figure that out, and I can tell you the rest of the plan to get there.
That idea of knowing who's going to sign and knowing how to map that to, what person in the organization is going to be making sure that you get out of this deal what you thought you were going to get. And when it is tens of millions of dollars in multiple years, that can be scary for all of the right reasons. And I think, when you're looking at either these big deals or these small deals, there's lots of decisions that are made, and some of them are a little, trying to think of the right word, but some of them are a little tricky for people, right? Because they're not necessarily those explicit decisions that come out of the textbook of like, in your role in procurement, you will find these following.
Yes.
But if you think about this idea of doing the right thing when no one's looking, you'd shared a story about, one line in a contract that was very important. And it got to the heart of understanding and empathizing with your suppliers to help them help you. Can you tell us a little more about that?
Absolutely. We had a clause in the contracts that we used in one of the companies I worked for that was immediately revoking instructions. So we could give notice and then immediately revoke the instructions such that we would stop the work. And we use this very effectively when we were going through things like 9/11 or COVID, when we needed to stop with our third parties. I never, ever, ever thought it was a good idea to spring this on our third parties. Like, oh, here's your notice. In 2 days, I had 36 vendor calls, 30 minutes each, told them exactly what was going on. It was brutal. It was Thursday and Friday, so I could slide into the weekend. But it was about, this is what we're going to do. This is what the notice that you're going to get. This is how we're going to approach it. I need you to think about it. Go talk to your counsel. This is the right we have in the contract, but be prepared for it. And then when we gave notice, everyone was like, oh, okay, thank you for the notice. This is what we're thinking could happen. So in some cases, we were thinking immediate. They're like, give us 2 weeks and we can do X, Y, and Z. So we were able to come up with a plan that worked for both sides. So much so, when we used it during COVID, that our third parties thanked us for the approach we took, because a lot of companies didn't, but even more, were willing to come back and work with us. So when the impact of COVID was lessened and we needed to re-engage, it was seamless. It was easy, and people were coming back and willing to work with us because of the way we worked with them.
I think it's so powerful when that supplier relationship is handled with empathy, with care for what matters to them. And sometimes organizations can take this attitude of we're the customer, we
Oh,
know best, and we're never wrong. And right, exactly. It made me flash back to this procurement manager that was bragging at a cocktail party about how he ground that supplier so hard that, when he was in town, they were too busy to meet with him. And I thought, oh my God, you're bragging about this?
yes.
I'd be embarrassed. And thinking about stories like that in the context of how do you help make it harder on your vendors or make it easier to help them help you. And there's a few sort of cardinal sins that some organizations execute on. And I know nobody would, well, I would like to say that nobody would condone this, but I think there's a few on the fringe that would. Just nobody that we work with. So can you tell me about some of those things that somebody in procurement can listen for and watch for, and just remember that that's on the other side of the red line?
So, in my opinion, a cardinal sin is going out to RFP with no intention of closing the deal. Things happen, we all know that. But you issue an RFP, you go to market, you get your third parties to invest time and effort while you either have a solution or don't have a authorization to go and do the RFP or go to contract. You know who you want, but you're following policy. Write an exception to the policy, be honest, be fair, don't waste third parties' time. Because ultimately, it could turn out you'll have no third parties worth playing with. So a brief story: I work within a company, and a group department came to me and said we want to do an RFP. So I worked with them, and it all went fine. We sent the RFP out, and we got zero bids. We got nothing,
Nothing.
no engagement at all.
Wow.
And it turns out when I made the phone call to everyone to inquire, because that's perfectly within the rights, but now I'm curious because I've never had this happen. Every single had the same sort of experience. That department, you're good, but that department, they take us to the dance all the time, but nothing ever happens. They waste our time and we're just not bidding. It's just not worth it. So we had the authority to go to market, had the authority to go to contract, and could find no third parties who wanted to work with us because the individuals in this department, granted, this was many years ago, so I'm sure they've learned, but the individuals within this department just would go out and say, well, I'm the customer, so you should be nice to me. To what end? And so
Yeah.
I think that's a cardinal sin you can't recover from. You just got to stop doing that.
And there's limits to it, right? There's
Yes.
there's the occasional mulligan, but the amount of time and energy that organizations put into those responses. And I know, coming up to that holiday season, there's a few teams that are thinking, oh, I got to get the RFP out. We got
Well,
to give them the deadline. They got to get it in for December 31st so we get our check mark on our bonus. But that it's more trouble than it's worth every
well, and
single time.
it's not fair because at the end of the day,
Yeah.
you want quality responses. But if it's particularly if it's someone's end of year, let them go get the business that's going to get them the bonus they want. You can tell them an RFP is coming. You can go and say, when are you doing your sales training for the new year? When are you having your meetings? We're going to issue the RFP around this date. But go find the thing that's going to let you, as the sales team, hit your quotas. And
Yeah.
and actually, it works out nicely. You have the conversation. You tell them what's coming. They've got something to look forward to in January. They look favorably upon you because they want that opportunity, but they're slammed anyway, and everybody wins because you're not gonna do a deal in December anyway. At best, you get the responses back, and nobody wants to read responses over the holidays. So really, there's just no good reason to do any sort of RFP that isn't going to go immediately to a contract. In which case, I'm wondering why you're doing an RFP. Uh, all back to the full circle again around the holidays, and I start that thinking in November, like tomorrow. You start thinking, is this really going to go to contract? If it's not, go tell your vendors, go tell the sales teams, go for work that will go to contract. Whether it's RFP or somebody wants something and you're just not going to get approvals, go work on that. Come back in January. You haven't lost your place in line, and we can all pick up from where we are.
It's bringing a sense of a stronger supply chain
Absolutely.
that takes work and takes some relationships and takes some transparency too. Of, hey, we might have to get 3 bids, but maybe we don't have to do the whole RFP process.
That's right.
Or we have an incumbent, and you can say that in the piece that you're getting out there, and then maybe that saves other people time, and then you don't get 2 other bids, but you ran the process.
And it's a small world. Let's be honest.
Isn't it?
It's a small world. Everybody knows everybody. So there's
Yeah.
going to be very little surprises that people say, oh, women, I thought you were using, I thought this was your, this is what I hear on the street.
Yeah.
And you can go, I find it much easier to tell people what they're going to hear on the street rather than they tell me what they've heard. I find that better to work in my favor that way.
Oh, every single time. Every time. It's coming back to what we were talking about, doing the right thing when no one's looking.
Absolutely.
I think that, speaking of doing the right thing, one of those never-ending themes that we like to bring is this reminder of when somebody goes to town and says, hey, 2 years and, mid 8-figure price tag to go and do the thing that you're trying to do, that I don't think scares enough people. And when I think about that idea of avoiding the disasters that can come with that, I think that first question of who's going to sign is so powerful to help you head that off. If you were going to suggest to folks a way to avoid the disaster and avoid the big scary thing and nobody knows who's going to sign, but getting to something to help people take what we've been describing as those bite-sized steps towards a vision, what advice do you have for folks to help with that? And especially if maybe they're, say, a North American firm implementing strict German solutions.
I think first you should consider the big picture and then really chunk it down. Understanding that's scary because you may not get all the funding you want. At some point, the funding may go someplace else. But define up front what it is that the minimum viable product that you need to have. Get engaged with your integrators up front. Avoid, if at all possible, them convincing that a 24-month project for $80 million is a good idea. That is never going to be a good idea. When it comes to, first off, your technology will be outdated and nobody can put a price tag on it. And really, you can't. That far out, that many changes, the market's going to change. So many things could happen. It's much better to say, what can I do in a smaller increment? And I understand that there's consequences to that, but do the small thing, get value from that. Do the next thing, get value from that. Do the next thing, get value from that. And be willing to say, I've gotten this value and this is good. I can sell a business case on this value. And but don't lose sight of the fact that there's this bigger vision. So work with your sponsors to articulate what is the big vision? What are the guiding principles that will keep you on track through all of these smaller increments? And then execute on the smaller increments. Not just with your third parties, but with your internal teams. Execute mentally, execute emotionally, think this is it, and celebrate when you've hit that milestone. Don't go, oh, when we have 14 more. No. So let me sit right here, right now, have my own little party, have a great time, and then we'll start the next one.
Yeah, taking those steps, celebrating the wins, looking back at how far you've come, and thinking about, okay, now here's the next steps. I love that. Colleen, when you're thinking about people in procurement and they're looking at these big IT contracts, if they've taken the advice and they're looking at taking more bite-sized chunks, what are some of the major risks that you feel like trap too many organizations or that are overlooked that you'd want to kind of land the plane here to invite people to really watch out for these or at least really think through how they tackle those?
So from my perspective, if you're looking at a solution, that is, you're going to go to market and you're going to pick an SAP or any one of the solutions that are out there, understand how you're going to consume that solution before you contract for that solution. If at all possible, before you start talking internally or externally about what the solution is. Understand I need 5 users Because any third party, and this, they're doing their job and they're to be admired for this, are going to want to sell you everything. But you're only going to need 5, and you may need only 5 users for months. And oh no, you get a much better deal if you sign up for 1,000. I'm sorry, you can't really convince me the math is ever going to work from 5 to 1,000. Maybe 900 to 1,000, I can get my head around it, but 5. So understand what your consumption, understand what you're gonna, how you're gonna consume that, be it through testing, be it through development, and work with your integrator before you work with your third party. Because your integrator, you have to worry about change management, you have to worry about project management, you have to worry about program management. All of these things should be well understood before you run to market. I so often see the reverse. Listen, I've got SAP, now I'm going to figure out how to use it. Well, no, I'm sorry. And SAP or any solution. Now we've got, it reminds me of Julia Roberts. I have money to spend. Hold on, before you have money to spend, what are you spending it on? Right?
What problem are we solving?
What problem are we solving? And how do we solve it? To do that, you have to understand your third parties. You have to understand what's important to them. You have to understand you're not thinking about just your first year of the contract or your first term, 3 or 5 year term. You're thinking about your second. Before you even think about your first, think about your second term. Bring in considerations like annual increases or things that are included in this contract that you want to make sure are included in the second one. Build that in, because otherwise your cost, you may get a great deal in the first term, and now you're stuck in a second term that costs are not capped the same way. Or new products, when you have an evolutionary product, new products aren't included. The pathway to get to new products is, buy a new license, a new type of license. Thinking about those things up front will really help you avoid a lot of risk. And the third parties, it has been my personal experience, and I'm sure you will have this as well. The good ones, the good third parties, want informed customers. They want to work with people who know them because they know you. So know them, make their jobs easier, and challenge them. But don't be asking for the stupid stuff when in fact that's not where your biggest bang is going to get. Because if they have to sell you this time and then they have to sell you again in 3 years, their life's just much more difficult.
Way harder.
Way harder. So is yours. So everybody wins. If you know them, they know you, and you think about all this stuff up front.
On the vision to that evolutionary path.
Absolutely. If you think you're going to have 1,000 in 5 years, start with 5. 5 years.
Amazing.
Then at 1,500, and you grow over time. But yeah, remember the third parties are going to want to send you 1,000. It's such a great deal.
Buy what you need.
Exactly.
It's what problem are we solving?
Absolutely.
I love it. Colleen, thank you so much for showing up, sharing what you know with all of these wonderful folks that are learning more about a stronger supply chain, stronger procurement for companies running SAP. Thank you so much, and we will see you again next week.
Sounds great. Thanks so much for having me. Take care.